One of the most infamous sound bites about NYS was made by the Deputy President, William Ruto, when he said a hairdresser admits to carrying money in sacks, making millions.
Stories, this is, please give us a break. Kiingereza mingi, mnafanyia catwalk hapa around, na ni wazi pesa ya umma imepotea.
That was NYS 1. What do you make of that statement in regards to graft at NYS?
That's interesting. Wow. It's a difficult question to answer because I don't know in what context it was said, but I know it was because of the corruption.
Yes.
That is NYS 1. So what I would say is that, yes, NYS has been riddled with corruption, real and perceived. One thing I can say is that NYS, when I walked into NYS, one of the things that we were grappling with is lack of structures, procedures, and systems. And therefore, it was easy for something like that to happen.
And that was NYS 1. We lost 791 million. NYS 2, 468 million as active cases ongoing right now. The DPP says it could be more than 8 billion shillings. In your view, having been here for 2 months, where does the problem lie?
It's the systems, the structures, the procedures that were never followed. And therefore, it opened this kind of windows for people to do business that is legal and illegal. Because if we had the systems, structures, and procedures well, I don't think we would have had this second NYS.
And when you took office, you vowed to fight cartels. Having been here for 2 months, do you now know who they are?
Cartels are, you can never know who they are. But I know the cartels can be fought by procedures, systems, and we follow the law there, and therefore those cartels can scatter. What I know is that the cartels are within and without. And therefore, I would not want to say that, yes, I know them, yes, I don't know them. But what I know is that whatever was happening that was aiding the cartel-like movement here, it was because people were taking advantage of lack of those structures and procedures. And therefore, somebody would just do whatever they wanted to do, so long as there was money to be paid. Let me tell you, and it's quite interesting, the stories are here, that somebody came and said she delivered something worth 87 million. So the procurement officer asked, do you have a requisition? No. Do you have an LPO? No. So what do you have? I have a delivery note. Can you pay somebody like that? I think she was coming to test waters.
How extensive has then vetting been for the new suppliers at NYS? Because they're part of the structures that you're talking about.
It's been extensive. We are to conclude that exercise by tomorrow, so that we look at your background, your address, your KRA, and all that, and we even go to registrar of companies to find out whether you are registered, who are these directors, those kind of things. Because before that, I believe we never did those due diligence.
And you mentioned that are there some old suppliers who have made it back to the list?
It's
now
possible.
That the vetting is ending tomorrow.
But let me say that not all suppliers were bad. Even the ones who are doing business with NYS, not all of them were bad. Just a few are the ones who are bad. And it was open for everybody. And we even said that even those old suppliers can still apply and still do good business with NYS.
In the vetting of the new suppliers that you're talking about, have you gotten any resistance from the old suppliers who you're now going to cut out?
No. They don't know whether you're cutting them out or not because you have not given them the results. But I don't think there's any reason why they should resist, so long as they have all the paperwork. They have the KRA, they have the addresses, they're registered. And if they fail, we'll tell them why they have failed the test. And for example, those ones who are under investigations, they know they are under investigations. So we'll tell them, you still have an integrity issue. Yeah? You still have an integrity issue. However, If you are cleared, then we can do business with you. But we are not going to pick on those ones with integrity issues. Yeah.
The president gave a warning about to heads of parastatals and even institutions that there is not going to be an excuse that someone called you.
Time is gone where you say I did because somebody made a phone call to tell me to do something. Responsibility is yours, and you will have to carry the weight of the decisions that you make.
Have you had any undue influence ever since you took office? Has anyone tried to come to you and use the power of their office to influence your decision in one way or another?
No. None so far. So good. Nobody has called. And you'd be mad to call to influence me to do the wrong thing. Everybody's alert. I'm alert. And I don't believe in that idea of somebody calling you unless they mean no bad for you.
Let's talk about the procedures for a bit. And one of the biggest loopholes has been the IPSOS system.
Yes.
Do you believe it should be reviewed?
I don't think we need to change the IPSOS as long as we are true to ourselves and we maintain integrity in making sure that that IPSOS is you do what you're supposed to do and making sure that you protect your identity and your PIN.
And it is that is exactly where the problem was, because passwords were easily accessible and people would make transactions on behalf of other people. And
That's what they said. That's what they said, but I don't know whether it's true because that's what they said.
have you checked the system now? Is it
the
possible?
system we have checked, and we have even gone up to Treasury and have seen. And you know, IPSOS, I believe, is something that you can improve on all the time. But remember, IPSOS is something that is fed by a human being. So it's likely that somebody can play around. But so long as you have your documentation right, I don't think anybody can play with that IPSOS.
And in the previous NYS scandal, people were trading blames and saying that it is so and so did this, and this is the other person, portraying a disjointed unit. Are you concerned about that, having taken the realm of NYS now?
I'm not really concerned because everybody here knows his work. If you are a procurement officer, you know what you're supposed to do. If you're a finance officer, you know what you're supposed to do. If I am the AIE holder, I know what I'm supposed to do. And if you are the accounting officer who is the PS, he knows his role to do. And therefore, that blame game, to me, will only arise if we don't have the structures I keep talking about. They will only arise when they have no structures. And you know, thieves thrive or cartels thrive well when there are no structures. But so far, I believe we have put in structures, and we're still continuing to strengthen those structures to ensure that everything flows. And one thing maybe I want to say is that we had the PwC coming on board, and they've looked at all the structures and the systems regarding financial management, procurement, financial management. Yeah. And they've looked at all those loopholes. And there's also a report that was done by ESCC in 2015, which I'm also going through, and the rest of the team which are here, so that we can implement where the weaknesses, where we can see the weaknesses in terms of the flow of the payments, whether it's procurement, where it comes to payment, you know, all those things.
So far, what do the weaknesses show? Where did the problem
The
arise?
weaknesses showed that, number one, that goods were being delivered without an LPO, which might not be a big problem if you could have gotten a framework contract. Because the excuse is that we don't have funds, and therefore we had to call the suppliers to give us the food, then we can give the LPO later, because an LPO is only given if there is budget. Yeah. So one of the things we need to do, we have done, and which we are still in the process, is to get framework contracts so that the suppliers can have like 2 years to continue giving us the commodities whenever we want.
And one of the things that has happened is Parliament has proposed to cut down the NYS budget from 22 billion to around 8.9 billion. How will that affect the service?
It has actually affected the youth empowerment program. Yeah. You know the program that the youth used to go out, the NYS, the servicewomen, servicemen going out to the community, do the community work. That is the one that was chopped off. Yeah. And it's affected because most of the youth outside there were really dependent on the youth empowerment program because they were being given money. So they were keeping about 200 shillings per day in the bank, and there's a very big circle movement with the youth. And some of the youth were using that money to start up other businesses. So it has really affected not just NYS, but the youth outside NYS as an institution.
And since you came in, how do you intend to fight graft? What are some of the solid, you keep referring to the structures, but what are some of the things you've already done to ensure that graft doesn't come up again at NYS?
Number one, we have gotten new procurement officers. We have gotten an auditors who are supposed to check through the payments. We have decentralized all the monies. Before that, all the monies were kept here in centrally, so that if Gilgil wants to purchase something, it's paid here. The food is taken to Naivasha, to Gilgil, to Tarbo, to Mbalambala, all those stations, Mombasa, and then Yatta, and then we pay it from here. That is bad, because how sure are you that those things were delivered? And then secondly, before payment, even in those units, before payment, we must look at the LPO, the delivery note, the acceptance note, and even the professional opinion, whether you actually got the value for money, whom you are giving that tender out. So there's several other things we have done in terms of making sure that even the officers are retrained, to ensure that through the PwC, we are doing in-house training, so that all officers that are in that supply chain are trained properly and understand their roles.
And the cabinet also proposed an oversight board with the Director General, which is yourself as the CEO. How will this really help in fighting graft?
NYS is a big institution with big monies, as you've been told, and yet it's a department and a ministry. And if it's a department and a ministry, the DG does not have full control of the monies that are in NYS. And therefore, those monies can be used by the ministry in any way they want. It doesn't have to be in NYS, because it's under the ministry. And then secondly, it will assist us once we become autonomous from the ministry. It becomes very easy to plan and know that this is the money we have and these are the activities we're going to have. And the board definitely is there to oversight whatever the DG is going to do. Right now, you understand I'm still acting. Once the restructuring has been is through, then they can appoint substantively the DG. Yeah. And I believe it will be me, because I don't see why anybody else. Yes, yeah.
You've spoken about autonomy, and should there be an NYS 3, will you take responsibility?
If it's autonomous, I'll take. Because the systems that we are putting in place, the buck should stop at the DG, not any other person. And therefore, you don't have to go and ask whether it's the PS or the CS did that. It is that DG who is the accounting officer and who is answerable to all those things we are doing. Yeah. Other than that, anybody can come and tell you we want this, and even make sure that your programs that you have put in place are never adhered to. Yeah.
So as it stands, you cannot take full responsibility in the event something happens?
To some extent, I can't. Because remember, there are some activities that can be done by the ministry and still use the NYS money. You can't say the DG did that. You can't, because it is done elsewhere. But if it's autonomous, then you know this is your money, you are responsible for this, you are accountable for this, and you are the AIE holder, and you are the accounting officer. Yeah. But so long as you're not the accounting officer, then therefore any other person can be held responsible.
You've been here for about 2 months now, and when you walked in, what surprised you the most?
What surprised me the most is the potential of NYS. Other than the corruption that everybody's reading about, which I also was reading about.
Did you find it when you were here? Have you seen any traces?
Remember, when I came in, first of all, there were no payments. The CS had stopped all the payments. The suppliers we got had been stopped. And therefore, I came in when we started new registration of suppliers. And therefore, you could not see any corruption.
One of the other concerns has come from the issue of recruitment, and cohorts say that there are some jobs that they did and they've not been paid for up to date.
The cohorts?
Yes.
It's true. It's true that we have a bill of 1.1 billion that has not been cleared for the cohorts. That is one of the bills that were not paid in the last financial year. We are hoping that we'll pay them in this financial year, and we are still going to engage Parliament because that 1 billion was money that the youths had done, but that is the money that was slashed from the budget. The about 8 billion that was slashed was going to pay the cohorts and also continue the youth empowerment program.
Yeah. So when do you see this being resolved?
As soon as the Parliament maybe gives us through the supplementary estimates, we'll pay them. Because that's a debt to the youth. And everybody knows that the youth is a very volatile population, that if you don't do that, and I think the CS knows about that, and the PS, they have taken it as a priority to ensure that they engage the Parliament, the relevant committee, to ensure that these monies are released to pay these servicemen, and the youth who are outside there.
And speaking of the volatility of the youth, there's been a concern that the transition from NYS into getting jobs has been really minimal, and the youth end up being just out there doing criminal activities or just staying without jobs.
I believe that any youth that has come through NYS has gotten a job. Majority of them get jobs. The few that have not gotten jobs, that's what we are saying. As I come in, we want to look at the exit strategy of the vocational training. What else? Because remember, first of all, we have the paramilitary training, then we have the national service, then we have the vocational training. Then after that, what else? So that exit program is what now we were working on. And as I came in, that was the first question I was asking, what do we do with the youths who cannot get a job as they exist in NYS?
During elections, we saw some of the youth from NYS in some sort of a collaboration with the police, and it gave the perception that they are a separate force.
Well, remember, the Act says that is a reserve army, is a reserve for the army, NYS. So they can be deployed. They can be deployed. It's not another service. It's just a national youth service, but can be deployed from time to time. After all, we also get engaged in police work, security work rather. When there's any function, we go there to give security backup. So it's not something that it was just done during electioneering period, but any other time we are called upon, we go.
But how far does the mandate go?
The mandate goes as far as they have been called upon, and in writing, either by the police, IG, or by the defense, which we have never done though, but we are a reserve of the army. And
as we come to an end, when you were told that you'd be the DG for NYS, what crossed your mind? What's the first thing that came to your mind?
It was a shock. Definitely it was a shock. And it was a shock because I never dreamt of coming to NYS. After people being arrested, the 2 DGs being arrested and reigned in court, why me? Let me tell you something, Trevor. I've never had prayers like that in my life. So many prayers, people praying for me. Personally, I also prayed because I didn't know what I was coming to. It was scaring. Even the time I was being introduced here, it was really, really scaring. But I've been here for 2 months now. I think it's doable. I'm a human being, you have to fear. Because I didn't know whether I'm going to end up in Langata in the next 1 or 2 years. But I'm confident I will not end up there. I'm confident.
What do you want Kenyans to remember you for?
I want Kenyans to remember me for one thing, number one. Number one is to know that is the daring lady. I really dared to come here. I'm telling you the truth. In fact, even my friends were asking me, are you sure you're not being set up? Honestly, everybody was
scared for your life at some point?
Scared at some point. So I want Kenyans to remember for, it's too early to say what I'll do, but I want them to remember that I came in at a time when there was a bit of turmoil, and to remember that I said I'm going to do my best to ensure that the youth, our focus should back on the youth. We are going to ensure that the youth get what they're supposed to have, and therefore go back and say that NYS was put in place to ensure that there's nationhood, patriotism in our country, and we are going to use the youth of this country to ensure that we have patriotism and nationhood. Secondly, to ensure that those youths in the villages and every other place who cannot have jobs join NYS and end up having jobs, because that's the exit strategy I want to look at, that the youths who come through NYS must have an exit strategy.
All right. Thank you very much for making time for us.
Thank you.
Asante sana.
Thank you so much.